The oldest written word ever found is not God, not love, not even a name. It's beer. A clay tablet from 5,000 years ago shows workers being paid their daily wage in beer. Ancient Mesopotamians drank it at work, at temples, at funerals. Children drank it. Priests drank it. The first civilization didn't run on money, it ran on beer. But here's the part nobody tells you: they probably had no choice. Imagine you're living in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago. You wake up and you need water. The river nearby has been used by 200 people to wash, to cook, and to dump waste into. You don't know what bacteria is, but you've watched your neighbor drink from that river last spring. He was dead before the week was over. Beer was different. When you ferment grain, when yeast eats the sugar and turns it into alcohol, most of the bacteria that would otherwise kill you die off in the process. Beer didn't taste like cold river water. It was thick, warm, and had chunks of grain floating in it. You drank it through a long reed straw to filter out the sediment. And it was barely alcoholic. Maybe 2 or 3%, about the strength of a light beer today. But it was safe, and that changed everything. Here's where it gets interesting. In 2018, a team from Stanford University went into a cave in northern Israel called Rakafet Cave and found something they weren't expecting. The people who made it were the Natufians, hunter-gatherers who had not yet settled into farming. They were nomads, no farms, no villages, no clay tablets yet. And yet, 13,000 years ago, someone in that cave figured out how to ferment grain into alcohol. They were doing it for ritual. The beer was found near burial sites, placed there for ceremonies honoring the dead. Before writing existed, before farming existed, before cities existed, there was beer. This discovery flipped one of the oldest theories in history. For decades, historians assumed humans started farming because they wanted a reliable supply of food, specifically bread. But an archaeologist named Patrick McGovern from the University of Pennsylvania spent years studying ancient alcohol residue in pottery, and he argues something different. He calls it the beer before bread hypothesis. Humans may not have started farming to grow grain for eating. They started farming to brew it. The desire for a consistent, controlled supply of alcohol is what convinced nomadic hunter-gatherers to stop wandering, plant crops, build storage, dig irrigation channels, and eventually build cities. Civilization, in other words, may have started with a craving for alcohol. Think about what that means. Every road you've driven on, every hospital that's ever treated you, every book ever written may exist because some hunter-gatherer 13,000 years ago really wanted a reliable supply of fermented grain. By 3000 BC in ancient Egypt, beer wasn't just a luxury. It was infrastructure. In 2010, the Egyptian archaeologist Zahi Hawass published findings from the Giza Plateau showing that the workers who built the pyramids were not slaves. They were paid laborers, and part of their daily pay was 4 liters of beer per day. Per person. Every day. These people were moving 2-ton limestone blocks in 40-degree heat, fueled in part by alcohol. The administrative records found near Giza showed designated brewing facilities. Massive vats, storage rooms, distribution records. The Great Pyramid was built by people who were, at least partially, drunk on the job. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, in what is now China, things were already happening much earlier. In 2004, Patrick McGovern analyzed pottery fragments from a Neolithic village called Jiahu and found chemical traces of an alcoholic drink dating back 9,000 years, made from rice, honey, hawthorn fruit, and grape. This may be the oldest deliberately brewed alcoholic beverage ever discovered. The people of Jiahu weren't doing this by accident. They chose specific ingredients. They controlled the process. By every definition, they were brewers. And in South America, the Inca and their predecessors were making something even stranger. Chicha, a fermented drink made from corn that goes back at least 5,000 years. The method was unusual. You put corn in your mouth, chew it until it's soft, then spit it into a pot. The enzymes in your saliva break down the starches, which yeast then ferments into alcohol. You are the key ingredient. Chicha wasn't casual. It was sacred. It was used in offerings to Inti, the sun god, poured at festivals, drunk at coming-of-age ceremonies, passed around in golden cups called aquilas. Many indigenous communities in South America still make chicha the same way today, in the same ritual context, using the same technique that's been passed down for 50 centuries. Now, here's a question that has probably never occurred to you. Why can humans drink alcohol at all? Most mammals can't. A small amount of ethanol is enough to seriously harm them. But about 10 million years ago, long before Homo sapiens existed, our primate ancestors developed a genetic mutation in an enzyme called ADH4. This enzyme metabolizes alcohol. Before the mutation, our ancestors couldn't safely eat fruit that had fallen from trees and started to ferment. After the mutation, they could. They had access to a food source, overripe, fallen fruit full of calories and sugar, that almost no other animal could safely eat. The ability to drink alcohol isn't a weakness. It's an evolutionary advantage that goes back 10 million years. We didn't discover beer 13,000 years ago in a cave in Israel. Our relationship with alcohol is older than our species. By the Middle Ages in Europe, not much had changed. Cities had grown, but the water problem hadn't gone away. Rivers near medieval towns were open sewers, full of human waste, animal remains, and industrial runoff. Drinking from them could kill you within days. Children didn't drink water, they drank something called small beer, a very low alcohol brew, usually under 2%, made from the leftover grain after regular beer was produced. Even monks in monasteries brewed their own. Some orders drank up to 5 liters of small beer per day, especially during Lent, when solid food was restricted and they needed the calories. Beer wasn't a vice. It was nutrition. It was medicine. It was salary. The oldest brewing recipe ever written is a Sumerian poem from around 1800 BC called the Hymn to Ninkasi. Ninkasi was the goddess of beer. The poem describes step by step how to brew it: soaking grain, spreading it on straw mats to germinate, baking it into a bread called bapir, then fermenting that bread in water with honey and wine. It is a religious text and a recipe at the same time. The ancient Sumerians made no distinction between the sacred and the practical. Beer was something you offered to the gods, and something you paid your workers. It was what you drank at funerals and what you made for festivals. It was the thing that kept your body alive, and the thing that connected you to something larger than yourself. Think about the last time you had a cold beer and felt that first sip settle something in you. That specific feeling, that release, has existed for at least 13,000 years. The Natufian woman who placed a clay pot of fermented grain at a burial ceremony felt something like it. The Egyptian stonecutter who took his first sip after an hour of lifting limestone felt it. The Inca elder who passed the golden aquila around the fire felt it. The medieval monk who brewed quietly in his stone cellar and drank before dawn felt it. We think of beer as something casual, a drink for barbecues, a thing you have when the match is on. But beer may be the oldest technology in human civilization. Older than the wheel, older than writing, older than agriculture itself. And it might be the reason all of those things exist at all. You're welcome.